All organisms must defend themselves against pathogens. Whether you're a plant, a fungus, an insect, anything, just as much as fish and mice are attacked by viruses, bacteria, and other microbes, so you too are vulnerable. So all organisms have defenses against pathogens. And there are similarities in these defenses that suggest everything evolved from common sources. However, these, which are called innate, have their limitations. Now, in addition to innate immunity, vertebrates have adaptive immunity. That is an additional form of immunity that involves changes to the DNA and the production of antibodies and specialized cells. So this group includes the fish, the amphibians, the birds, the reptiles, the mammals, including humans. And I would like to point out that one of the reasons that we have such very large mammals, or reptiles and big birds, is that we have an immune system that's very effective at defending us, and so we're allowed to produce this great big huge yummy body that's very attractive to pathogens, and we can defend it against their incursions. Insects are also a group of highly successful multicellular animals. They probably have the greatest number of species on the planet and the greatest biomass, even though individually they can be quite small. They also have a form of immunity that allows for a flexible response. It doesn't use changes to the DNA, so it's not called adaptive, but what they have is splicing options for an mRNA precursor. That is, many of the insect's immune molecules are coded for by a gene called DSCAM. And DSCAM can produce a message that can be spliced in over 38,000 different ways. So they can produce a very large variety of molecules in response to a particular infection. So we have these defenses. Now that's the good news. The bad news is that they're energetically expensive. So here I have a picture of ATP. You can see the adenine base here, ribose sugar here, the phosphates extending outward, and the two high energy bonds are where these two phosphates are attached together. And this provides the most common source of energy transfer in all living systems. However, we can also use guanine where the adenine is, or uridine, and we can still use the high-energy phosphate bonds for the GTP and ATP to transfer energy, just that ATP is the most commonly one used. So what I'm reminding you is that we are funding a policing function with this stuff. That is because the immune system, like any policing system, costs you, and in this case it doesn't cost you dollars, it costs you high-energy phosphate bonds. So one of the downsides of our wonderful double-pronged immune system is that it's really quite expensive. Another downside is that these defenses represent a serious threat to your own body, and you control them to make sure they don't wind up attacking your own tissues. That does happen with autoimmune diseases, but how you then control your immune system is very critically important to you and your continued good health. The next thing I want to emphasize is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I will be praising engineers, particularly civil engineers, because what they provide for us is clean water and proper sewage disposal. You put together clean water and proper sewage disposal and you get what we call sanitation, the ability to keep your pathogens out of your drinking water. When the British Medical Journal polled a bunch of healthcare workers in Britain in 2007 and asked them what was the greatest top medical milestone in the last 150 years, sanitation was overwhelmingly the favorite response. 90% of the health difference in third world countries versus first world countries comes from the fact that we have clean water to drink and they don't. So we want to be very, very grateful to engineers for this. Another improvement that I would like to talk about is something to make it another shun: habitation. We are designing our dwellings to make them harder for insects to get into. Now, here we have some mosquito netting. Mosquitoes are vectors for some of the world's nastiest diseases, and a major prevention of disease transfer is facilitated by giving you a safe place to rest and eat and sleep. And so this is mosquito netting. We put screens on the windows. I can save a good word for television because it keeps people inside. In general, that means that they don't get bitten by disease-carrying mosquitoes. And if one of the mosquitoes gets into a house with a sick person, it has a harder time getting back out diseases in its gut. Another important gift of engineers is our infrastructure. The delivery of food, proper nutrition, providing services, the ability to communicate, all of that is dependent on a highly sophisticated infrastructure that allows us to move goods and services, to communicate with each other, to provide food for everyone, because again, malnutrition is a major contributor to disease. And so if you'll recall, we need this kind of underlying support that we have in first world countries especially, but really anywhere, so that we can get goods and services to people who need them, and that will help to keep them healthy. My final shun is vaccination, and this is somebody getting an oral polio vaccine in India. They were having a vaccination program for polio. And while engineers didn't give us this one, without the communications and transportation infrastructure, we would have a very hard time delivering the vaccines to people who need them. And I want to say again how sad and awful disease burdens are on a society. They're a horrible drain in terms of personal misery, and they incur huge economic costs because having your workers sick or worried about somebody who is sick, that makes for a much less productive workforce. And I think this picture says it all. It shows a mother who's clearly very worried about her child. It shows other people that are there in this hospital in Burundi trying to get treated. So that if children are sick, especially in infancy, that also seems to be correlated with a lowered IQ. In the 20th century, people observed not only a steady increase in the average height of people in first world countries, but also in their IQ test. And there were a lot of speculation as to what was going on. When people re-examined the data, they realized that this increase, called the Flynn effect, was paralleled by an increase in public health. And about 67% of the increase in cognitive abilities tested by IQ test could be correlated to the improved health care that people were receiving. In particular, the prevention of diarrheal diseases, okay, that sanitation issue again, is important in the proper development of young children. If you have diarrheal diseases, that robs the brain of critical nutrition at critical points in its development. Something like 87% of the energy a newborn takes in is used in the brain. It's still 44% at 5 years, and even you and I as adults are using something like 25% of our energy to support our neural functions. Other diseases damage the brain directly. Malaria, for example. If the parasites get into your brain, they can produce blood clots that can compromise cognitive function, cause strokes, and even kill you that way. So again, preventing disease is an important part of public health. And here is one of our greatest villains. This is a child with measles. And this is a particularly nasty disease for kids because not only does measles make you sick and sometimes kill you, measles also compromises your ability to fight off other diseases. That is, it's an actual immune compromiser during the period of time and for some months after that you have recovered from the disease. Measles vaccination in developing countries can lower the subsequent mortality to other childhood diseases by as much as 80%. Just not being sick with measles makes it that much likelier that you can get over some other disease. There's currently a measles initiative working to eradicate the disease, and I would be happy never to see another case again. Now, this is what we really want for our children. We want them to grow up well-nourished, free of disease, ready to learn and grow. And underlying this course, you will see that one of my objectives always is to give you the information you need to support your country, your family, your children in the best way possible.